welcome to our live stream, our post-budget. What does the budget mean for women on people on income support? So I'm Janet Rice, Green Senator for Community Affairs and Social Services, joined here, and I'm in Naarm, Melbourne, joined with Senator Larissa Waters, who is joining us, the Green spokesperson on women, joining us live from Meanjin, and Angela Finch, who's the Women's Economic Justice Advocate. So welcome to this
Nipaluna.
In Nipaluna. Okay, excellent. So welcome to this post-budget briefing on women and income support. So as I said, apologies for the delay. We had a bit of technical problems, but hopefully we're all set now. We, over the next hour, are going to be discussing the budget that was brought down last week and what this means for women and people on income support. I want to start, of course, by acknowledging that we're all, no matter where we are across the country, on the lands of First Nations peoples, on land that is, always was and always will be Aboriginal land, where sovereignty has never been ceded, and where we need to make sure that amongst all the work that we are doing, that we are standing side by side, working with our First Nations peoples, working for treaty, working for justice. And particularly when we're talking of issues of economic justice, we know that the issues of really struggling to survive is something that our First Nations peoples often feel more than most. And so welcome to any First Nations peoples who are joining us this evening. And yeah, I really want you to know that we've got your back. So look, as I said, Green's spokesperson on community services and government services. I might get Larissa and Angela to just introduce themselves as well before we go any further. So over to you, Larissa.
Well, thanks so much, Janet. I'm Larissa Waters, the Green Senator for Queensland, one of two now. And as Janet said, I'm dialing in from Meanjin, also known as Brisbane. So it's Turrbal and Yagara land here. And sovereignty was never ceded anywhere. So I'm hopeful that we can get some progress on not just voice, but also truth and treaty in this term of Parliament. Wouldn't that be a wonderful step forward towards a healed nation? And I'm so pleased that Angela Finch is able to join us tonight. I met Angela in Parliament House at an event, might have been 2 months ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, that was focused on the impact of the financial impact of the cuts to the single parent payment that unfortunately then Prime Minister Gillard had brought in 10 years ago. And I'm really pleased, and we'll go into this in more detail, but I'm really pleased that Angela's advocacy and a number of other wonderful people in this space, including Therese Edwards from the Single Parents Advocacy Group, have got, you know, most of a win in the most recent budget. It's not perfect, but it's damn sight better than it was. So congrats to you, Angela, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. Over to you.
Oh, no worries at all. And thank you, Janet and Larissa, for the opportunity to discuss what we need to discuss and keep the fight going. I suppose it was a huge win. So I am a single mother, a sole parent to 3 daughters, 14, 10 and 6, almost 6, and became a single parent due to DV in July 2020 and have been fighting the good battle since then, to put it simply. But huge change, massive, like amazing. In my very small role in doing this, the morning that was announced before 7 a.m, I had 2 mums on the phone in tears. With relief. Not perfect, but oh my Lord. My heart. And I think also the bigger win is the discussion being had now. And the way, the words we're using to talk about people rather than derogatory slurs or stupid made up nonsense, rather than discussing the people and the issues. And I was thinking about it earlier today, and I suppose tonight's really about adding nuance to those and those stories and keep telling them. And I'm going to mute my mic and say thanks and hand it over to you because I hear a small one.
Great.
Angela's joined us right on her kids' dinner time, so we're particularly grateful for her time. And yes, like all single mums, she's got to multitask.
Absolutely, and we recognise and apologise for this being right on dinner time and bath time and everything else. And in fact, a shout out to Sam Drummond and Gwen. Sam, who used to work for me, said that he thought he might listen in while he was bathing Gwen. So if you're listening in, Sam, that's right. We know you're there. Okay, so as well as us talking through some of the issues that were in the budget, particularly, yes, the parenting payment extension, the abolition of Parents Next, and the changes and the lack of changes in income support payments. There's some of the key issues that we're going to talk through tonight. But we also want to talk about anything else that you would like to talk about. So there's an opportunity to ask any of us questions. If you put your questions in the Facebook stream, the Facebook chat, in the comments section, we will do our best to answer them towards the end of the hour. So as I said, there were a few changes that were made in the budget: abolishing the Parents Next program, changes to the parenting payment single in terms of families being able to access it beyond when their kids turn 8, between the ages of 8 and 14, and then some really sadly only very minor changes in income support, in job seeker, youth allowance and student allowance. So I thought we'd just sort of talk through those three to kick us off. So starting with the abolition of Parents Next. So I just sort of wanted to kick off asking you, Angela, can you tell us what Parents Next was and your experience with this program, and how you feel about the announcement that's now been abolished?
Excited, thrilled, like just thrilled, beyond thrilled. I censor myself sometimes because I'm very good at just keeping it straight. So I'm just going to keep it straight, actually. It was punitive and it was abusive. And it was not just abusive to single parents, but also the knock-on effect of their children. So beyond thrilled it's gone. My very first interaction with Parents Next literally left me on the floor crying. It did, and it was on a massive day for my family personally, and it's something that people on the phone don't understand. They've just been given a sheet of paper to call. And I think it's good to remember in everything we've just been through with robo-debt and moving forward in changing obligations to human rights, essentially was what we're talking about. I think we need to keep it in check. It was a really big day for my family. We were walking home from our school in our new house for the very first time, and as we were walking up the last bit of the hill, I got the phone call, and it did end with me locked in my bedroom on the floor, because the tone it locked you into things that you didn't even know there were an issue in your life. So we don't need to talk about it too much anymore because it's gone, but it was really destructive, and it left women and children with nothing automatically. You missed an appointment because your child was sick, or because you were in therapy with your child, or your own therapy, or at a doctor's appointment. Your payments were cut off immediately, overnight, and that was a lived experience for me. I woke up one morning and couldn't pay my rent, pay my electricity, buy food, buy medication, transport, pay the phone to bloody call Centrelink in the first place, or pay the internet bill because everything's done online nowadays. Terribly punitive. Extremely happy it's gone. What was the second part of that question?
Just wanting to, your experience of it. And
my experience was quite short-lived, only because I already had a plan. And I think this is the assumption that is awful about these obligation programs, is we're assuming people are in their worst moments and most vulnerable moments in their life when they need help, like they don't know how to get out of it, like they don't know how they got there, like all of a sudden their humanity and their skills and intellect have just evaporated because we need some help from the society we live in. So I'd already had a plan. I'd already gone like enrolled myself back into uni and applied for that. So my interaction for them was very short. But when you have someone who you've never met ring you and go, well, hi, my name's Karen and I'm going to be your mentor.
Yeah.
Hi, Karen. Like, I'm all up for mentors, and I've actually asked several women in my life that I've met through this journey to mentor me. I don't need someone to tell me I need one or that they're going to be the right mentor for me. Like, you might be the right mentor for someone else, but not for a woman who has got herself out of a violent situation in the middle of a pandemic, got herself into education, got her kids into new schools, got a house, moved 250 k's from where we were living. I don't need someone to tell me how to get my life together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
You are the expert in your own life and your own
Exactly.
yeah, and I think, you know, all of us can go, oh, we're pretty bad at asking for help for sometimes, but if the help's there, we can ask for it. We don't need shoved down our throat in a reductive manner.
Yeah.
That's right. So needing support rather than those sort of punitive punishment, basically.
Punishment. And a reminder, a constant reminder that you've had a hiccup in your life. You're always reminded of the worst of the worst rather than, I know I live here. How about we talk about moving out of it rather than what I have to do to keep consultants and contracts maybe happening? Like,
Yeah. And look, and we really congratulate all the advocates and people who've fought so hard that led to the announcement to abolish Parents Next. It was a really big achievement. I actually want to have a really big shout out to my predecessor in the role that I'm in sort of the portfolio of community and social services, former Senator Rachel Seward, who just was like an absolute, you know,
Dog with a bone.
Dog with a bone over Parents Next. And the other thing I wanted to say is just, you know, seeing the abolition of Parents Next just makes it so clear that the other mutual obligations that other people on JobSeeker have to jump through are exactly the same. It's exactly the same, that you have to do these things, and presuming the worst of people, presuming that they are incompetent and they haven't got skills and that they need, you know, yes, these privatised employment service providers to help them to try and find work. So as Greens, we are going to be continuing to work for all mutual obligations to be abolished, and really see the fact that Parents Next has been abolished as the first step in getting rid of all of these other sort of punitive obligations.
Yeah, absolutely agree. That's why I said it that way.
Okay. Shall we move on to parenting payment single and the changes in the budget on that? So, Larissa, did you want to sort of kick us off about sort of a bit of the history of parenting payment single and, you know, where we've got to with it?
Yeah, look, I can a bit. In it was initially a John Howard proposal, which kind of tells you all you need to know about whether it was a good policy for women. And then sadly, about 10 years ago, in fact, on the day of the misogyny speech, which always, you know, broke my heart that we had this wonderful moving speech from Prime Minister Gillard, but on that same day, she removed the grandfathering provision such that women, rather than keeping the higher single parent payment until their youngest child was 16, they dropped off that higher payment down to what we now call JobSeeker. It was called New Start or something else ridiculous at that stage. They dropped down when their youngest child was 8. So essentially halved the age range, and it took approximately $100 out of the pockets of struggling single parents, which are predominantly single mums. Of course, there's some single dads out there, but it's you know, majority single mums that were now $100 a week worse off for some pathetic saving to government. And the notion that any reasonable government, let alone a government that's allegedly on the left, the notion that they think that they should make savings off the back of people who are already on the breadline is just repugnant to me. And it's really tarnished my view of that period of government. So I'm beyond thrilled that we've seen not a complete reversal, which would have been great, but the majority reversal of that terrible decision. So now the change in the budget is that you can stay on the higher payment of single parent payment until your youngest turns 14. which is really good. There's a couple of issues with that. The rate of payment is still really low. And I know we're going to talk about the rates of job seeker and youth allowance and disability support pension for that matter. All of these rates of what's meant to be support so that people can get by are all below the poverty line. And this is very much Janet's portfolio, and she's doing wonderful work in that space, as did Rachel Seawick, who's already been name-checked tonight before her. So it's great that the age range has been lifted to 14, but still an inadequate amount of money. The other issue that we've identified is that unfortunately those rules don't kick in until September. So I've had single mums reach out to me saying, well, my youngest turns 8, after the 1st of July, but before September. What am I going to do for these 2.5, 3 months where I'm suddenly $100 worse off, right when we're in the worst of a cost of living crisis, and when rents are increasing 10 times as much as the increase in Commonwealth rent assistance? So it's this perfect storm that the Greens really feel that the budget failed to tackle. It's made some positive improvements, and the increase in single parent payment is one. But fundamentally, if the government rethought its priorities and we cancel those nuclear submarine contracts and we cancel those stage 3 tax cuts, which are not going to cost $254 billion, are now going to cost, we've just had it recosted, $313 billion. And they go 2/3 to men, 1/3 to women. So there's a gender problem with those tax cuts that go to wealthy white people anyway. If the government didn't fund those stupid things, we could actually have a decent rate of single parent payment. We could increase the rate of job seeker. We could look after people on disability support pension. We wouldn't have to cut $74 billion from the NDIS like the government's also doing. All of these choices that are unfortunately leaving people behind. But I'm getting off track, getting on a bit of a rant. The point is there was some positive changes, and we really welcome those. And it's thanks to the strength of the advocacy, people like Angela, people like Therese Edwards, and many other champions in this space for women to have a bit more of a fair go than we've had so far.
Absolutely. So, what I wanted to add to that was that with those with the single parents whose kids turn 8 between July and September, we are going to continue to go into bat for them. In fact, Larissa and I have written to the Minister and saying, what are you going to do? You've got this group of people, because they should be able to, bring it forward and not have that and introduce it as of the 1st of July. And the other thing is that we all know that, parenting doesn't stop when your kids turn 14, and that there are a lot of parents who really, it would not be wise for them to be trying to be in full-time work with 14 and 15-year-old kids who, for many kids, some 14 and 15-year-olds are absolutely wonderful and, adult behaving and sort of, doing everything for themselves, great, but an awful lot of 14 and 15-year-olds aren't.
Well, right on topic. On topic about the age of 14. So my eldest is 14. I had a meeting with her. I'm trying to get her into a better school for her, an e-school. It's online. I've been told her psychologist thinks it's the best for her. She's had some major issues. The e-school application would be better if someone was at home all the time with her to guide her through her online studies. And now her application is weakened because I can't be. She's not my youngest child, luckily, but I'm still out of the home a couple of days a week. And now that is going against her own education. So 14, and we've got lots of research in this country about 14 being a really shit age to not have parents around. And I agree, some are fine and ready to go and fly, and it's our job to support them, but it's our job to support them in any way at any time of their development that they need. And to put a punitive, gosh, it's not 8 anymore. Excellent. A kid's not even illegally allowed to cross a road in any state in this country. So whoever thought that a man, anyway.
It totally was a bunch of things.
So I think we do need to push, 14 is fabulous. And yes, I work with a woman casually also who's gone into, she's been offered part-time work. She's had the first fortnight of work in that role. It's not enough. It's not. And now she has this light at the end of the tunnel because her youngest is 9. She's got to get through to September.
Somehow.
Yeah.
Somehow she's got to work out how to not have enough money to pay her rent until September, working part-time in this country.
Yeah, which is just so tough. And I know, I've been chairing the Senate Community Affairs Committee's inquiry into poverty in Australia over the last year, and the heartbreaking stories of what families, particularly single women, single parent families, are going through in terms of just making that juggle of making these impossible decisions of whether you buy enough food, whether you pay the rent, whether you pay for your medications, and in the heartbreaking situation of people living in cars with their kids because they just have been evicted from their houses where the rent's just gone up by $100 a week.
And who hides that? The people, the families are living in cars too are women, and we don't know that because we're hiding it. We're freaking excellent at hiding and showing the world what the world needs to see.
I just wanted, before we move off the parenting payment single, just a bit of a snapshot of what it means. It means that there are about 15,000 single parents who have got kids who are 14 and 15-year-old who won't be supported. And as we said, some of them will be fine, but the substantial proportion of those 15,000 single parent families who are going to be really, still really, really struggling. Yeah. So then the third area of the changes in the budget, I'm about to say big changes, but sadly they weren't big changes, was the raise to income support, which $2.85 extra a day for people on job seeker, on student allowance and youth allowance, which doesn't even buy you a loaf of bread, doesn't buy you a kilogram of potatoes. No, it's just a real slap in the face in terms of the scale of the problem. And in fact, to lift people out of poverty and to be raising income support to above the poverty line, which, as Larissa was saying, we can afford to do if we made some different political choices, we should have been raising the payments by $40 a day, not $40 a fortnight. And essentially, the government's made the choice to leave people in poverty. So, we're not going to pat them on the back for $2.85 a day. Yes, even that $2.85 we know will make a difference to people's lives. So we're not going to be standing in the way of seeing it implemented and giving and allowing people to have that extra payment. But it is really just the beginning of what's needed. It's it's woefully inadequate to keep up with the rising cost of living in the cost of living crisis that we're in. Woefully inadequate to keep up with rises in rents, and particularly. Yes, we also had a very small increase to Commonwealth rent assistance of about just over $1 a day.
$1.12 or something for 30.
$1.12, whereas rents in the capital cities just in the last year have risen 10 times that much. And so again, just absolutely not doing it. So just barely touching the sides in terms of what's needed. And the other what I found really disappointing was that it goes against the recommendations, which ended up being quite strong recommendations from the government's own hand-picked Economic Inclusion Advisory Committee. I mean, this was a committee that was set up, that the government set up to make sure that the people on it were their people. Former Social Services Minister Jenny Macklin, who chaired it. And look, they didn't go as far as what we Greens would want them to go. They didn't recommend that there should be an increase to above the Henderson poverty line of $88 a day. But they did say that the rate of job seekers should be at 90% of the age pension, sort of raising it to about $76 a day. And they ignored that, So basically, really, here we've got this clear message from the government's own committee and some of the government's own backbenchers, signing on to the calls from ACOS to be raising the rate as well. But it was a slap in the face, while at the same time they are still going to be going ahead with the stage 3 tax cuts of the $313 billion over the next 10 years. Plus, the subsidies to the fossil fuel companies, plus, the AUKUS submarines. It's really, the most, disappointing choices that this government has made in this budget.
Strong agree. There was another task force that the government didn't really do what that task force recommended either, and that's the Women's Economic Equality Task Force, which made some fairly modest but all very good suggestions for reform to try to get us towards gender equality and women's financial security. And the government's done the same thing as they did on JobSeeker, Janet. They've sort of hat-tipped it so that they can say they've done something, but they haven't actually done enough to really fix the problem. So it feels like a bit of a political fix rather than a legitimate fix that will actually improve people's lives, which is absolutely tragic from a government that's meant to be on the left. And yet they've delivered up this flimsy surplus, and we're meant to all be thrilled that we're back in surplus. Well, yeah, tell that to the people that are living in cars, and tell that to the people that, you know, can't buy their kid a uniform that fits them, even secondhand. It's, yeah. So
Yeah.
The Women's Economic Equality Task Force just quickly recommended a few things, including that there be super on paid parental leave. The government hasn't touched that at all. And they have said that paid parental leave will be slightly longer, but it's not kicking in for ages yet. So again, they're kind of doing a little bit here and there to try and look like they're appreciating issues, but they're really not tackling the main game. There's a few other things that I wanted to say about the budget generally, but Janet, I'm not sure if now is the time. I'm in your hands.
Well, quickly, I mean, I just wanted to remind people that if you've got questions, please pop them in the comment section of Facebook. We've already got a good handful, so we want to make sure we leave plenty of time for those. And then I wanted to be moving on. So, you know, where to from here? What are we going to be doing?
Yeah.
So perhaps Larissa, yeah,
Just
I mean,
a couple of minutes.
a couple of
budget
extra
highlights
observations
for
on the
women.
budget. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
great. Well, we've tackled the main ones already. There was a little bit more in the money in the budget for frontline domestic family violence and sexual violence services, which is very welcome. But unfortunately, again, the quantum isn't what the sector said they really need to help everyone that needs help. So unfortunately, it's about 2/3 of what the sector's saying they need so that they don't have to turn people away. Very welcome increase, but like, don't shortchange women fleeing violence. Don't make savings in that area. For goodness sake, fund things. There was some good support for the Australian Breastfeeding Association hotline. That's great. That really helps new mums. There was a little bit of money for sexual assault and consent laws, and there's been an announcement today that those will be properly reviewed and strengthened, and that's also very welcome news. But as I mentioned, not enough for frontline domestic violence services, no superannuation on paid parental leave. And unfortunately, whilst there were some small women's health announcements, nothing to make contraception more affordable or free, and nothing to make terminations, abortion, more accessible or free. So unfortunately, some good, some woefully disappointing. That's my extreme summary of the budget for women from this government.
Yes. A lot more that could be done and needs to be done. So look, maybe, I mean, we've certainly, in terms of our Greens policies, we've got a whole range of things that, you know, if we were there with being able to sort of direct what was happening as to what we would have. But Angela, so over to you. I mean, what were the measures that you were looking for in the budget that you would have liked to have seen that weren't there?
For me, the biggest thing that would make a difference right now without adding payment, like money to the payments, which we clearly is not a thing right now. We'll keep fighting. Unlinking child support from any payments, so they're linked. So as soon as you get it's $1,000 or $1,200 in child support a year, that affects any payment you're on. $1,200 because apparently, you know,
Nothing.
apparently that's good.
$100 a month.
Yeah. So I think they should be uncoupled, and that's immediate. Like, that could actually just happen immediately. And the other thing for me personally, in my situation right now, other than fixing all the other systems, is actually doing something about child support debt. It's $2 billion out, and we say child support debt, it's debt, it's money our children are owed. Like,
yeah,
it's children of this country are owed. Not crazy mums making stuff up. This is through government systems, and it's generated by them. They calculate the rate that are meant to be paid and who it's meant to be paid to, but there is no follow-up. If I owed $2 billion, I'm sure the government is
They'd go after you.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure, and you know, I've had a Centrelink debt. They came really hard.
Yeah.
That would be huge for women. Again,
Yeah.
it's not just a women issue. We know women pay child support as well as receive it, but it is that bulk again
Yeah.
of women that are taking that burden on. So I think that would be, and it would be really simple and easy to do. That is tangible and actually makes a real difference. Having that child support go into your account is much more tangible than $2.85 or $2.50 or $1.15 in assistance. And the other thing for me personally, knowing when, how much, and that it will definitely be there would be really good, because personally you can't actually budget in to you, because you never know when it's coming, how much it'll be, and the system's updated when the payment's been processed already, so you can't even go on there and go, oh, this is what's been paid on the 15th. It's like, oh, this much has been paid, and it will show up in your account in the next few days. So without obviously financially supporting women better or people on any payment better, that straight away would be really easy. And making, if we're going to what was in the budget with the Medicare rebates, taking the choice out of doctors' hands if they get to bulk bill, or if you have to give your healthcare card over and let them know, the doctor, or know all that information before you see them. So we haven't had a doctor in over 12 months. All 4 of us have ongoing issues.
Wow.
The eldest child is the only one with a consistent doctor right now because of headspace.
Oh, wow.
That's it. Right.
Wow.
So also, if doctors aren't going to understand where we live, people who are struggling, they need to have those decisions taken out of their hands. They don't get to decide if they bulk bill anymore. They just have to bulk bill. If the patient comes in and goes, hi, I'm bulk billing this appointment, here's my Medicare card, they have to do it. Oh, and here's my healthcare card, so I won't be paying anything today. Thank you.
Absolutely.
That would be huge. That would be so massive. And what really frustrated me, like the doctor thing, is the doctor surgery we're going to was actually built under government funding. when we had the GP super clinic idea, great idea. I personally thought it was a brilliant idea. I used it in 2 different states and it worked very well for my family. And now they're private now, and you don't get it. So I think, if we're not going to actually overhaul and actually put the money into Medicare, and let's take that choice out of doctors' hands so we can have healthcare.
Well, that's what we pay taxes for. I mean, we all pay Medicare levy because this is a service that a country owes to its citizens.
That's right.
And we agree with you that you shouldn't have to pay a cent to go to the doctor. Likewise, the dentist, for that matter. If we step dental onto Medicare as well,
that's
you
right.
just rock up and get healthcare. It's not the US.
It's part of the safety net that people really sort of are proud of, that in Australia that we had, a decent sort of safety net, but it has just got so many gaping holes in it.
That's right. It's no longer a net, it's kind of a hoop. There, and the net part's gone. And I agree. I think maybe the next part might be for all advocates is to go, well, we actually, as Australians, we're really proud of looking after people when they're in, and we still are, and we see that in disasters. So why is this any different? This is a disaster in my life. Not my life, just a moment in my life. And that moment might be 6 months. It might be 12 weeks. It might be 6 months. It might be 12 months, 18 months, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. It might, who cares? Like, we take pride in that. And considering we have so many people in government now that have benefited from the actual net being there in the safety, how about we put the net back there? Like, because we have a generation of people in power now because we had a safety net. I don't think we're going to get another follow through generation because the net's not there anymore.
Which goes to, I mean, one of the big things that we want to see, you know, yes, get dental care and mental care into Medicare and to recreate that net in terms of income support. You know, the fact that sort of it needs to be there at a decent level, both for the people that are on it now, but for people who know that, look, if, you know, something happens in their life, they're in a precarious job and they are then suddenly out of work, that there's not that fear of what's going to happen. Which is why, you know, raising the rate of all income support payments above the poverty line and abolishing those really punitive and destructive mutual obligations, and generally and genuinely having a guaranteed livable income for people. And we can afford to do that so that everybody, no matter their circumstances, will know that the safety net will be there, that you know, the country and the community will look after them as they get through those tough times in their life. And yes, and so that people don't have to have that fear. I mean, one of the, a couple of the other parts of that safety net is making sure that the disability support pension is more accessible, because we know that it's, you know, it's at least 40% of people who are on job seeker and really struggling on job seeker who have got significant disabilities, but they are unable to get on to the disability support pension. And then where we have got the support, you know, trying to get support to get people into work, which have now been privatised in incredibly expensive, you know, private employment service providers costing over $1 billion every year to run. We want to see those employment services come back into the Commonwealth and that they be voluntary and genuinely helpful for people, to help people get
as opposed to a total nightmare that makes a lot of profit for themselves and makes other people's lives miserable. So look, you know, as us as Greens, we're going to continue to be, you know, fighting for economic justice for people and continue to be supporting people and to be rebuilding that safety net. And obviously we've got quite a lot of power in this Parliament with the balance of power in the Senate. So any legislation that to get through the Senate, it either needs to have the support of the Liberals, which, you know, the Liberals have decided that they're not supporting things, and we don't want Labor to be, you know, going and doing deals with the Liberals. So if they haven't got the support of the Liberals, they need to have us. They need to have the Greens to get legislation through the Parliament. So as we've seen in, you know, some really significant bits of legislation so far in this Parliament, particularly on the safeguard mechanism and other legislation, we have been able to really improve government legislation. And clearly, you know, we're obviously in negotiations at the moment about approving their appalling and totally inadequate housing legislation, and it's because we've got that balance of power in the Senate that they actually do have to negotiate with us if they want to get that legislation through. So shall we move on to questions? Yeah, let's. And I think you've nicely anticipated one of the questions that I can see on my screen, Janet, with your last contribution there.
Yeah, so the first question, David Nimmo, how can you folks get better numbers? Labor is a bitter disappointment. Why can we not get you folks into government? As great as your policies are, not much progress without numbers. Larissa, I mean, did you want to add to some of the stuff that I've just said about?
Yeah, look, I might a little. Well, I'm from Queensland, where I've been the lone Greens federal representative for many a year, and yet at the last election, we just got 3 lower house people and 1 additional senator elected. So there's now 5 Queenslanders at the federal level from the Greens now, and I don't think anybody saw it coming, but we saw it coming because we were doing the door knocking work. They actually asked people what their concerns are and talking to them about the values that we would stand for in Parliament, and that would be to help people, to try and help the planet, and to not give away tax cuts for people that didn't need it, to not waste billions on nuclear submarines, to not give free money to fossil fuel polluters, but actually to start to take action on the climate crisis, to fix the housing crisis, and to try to materially improve people's daily lives. And it was kind of a dare to dream campaign, in that we said to people, you can actually have a government that works for you. You don't need a government that's working against your interests all the time, punishing you and underfunding you. You can actually have it better. And people went, hell yeah, we deserve that. And they voted for us, and we got all of these fantastic lower house reps. So really the point is, I think we need to give people license to demand better for themselves and to demand policies that work for them. not just work for big political donors or big vested interests or big business. You know, ordinary people are sick of those groups of people getting favours in Parliament. They want decisions that help them. And I think that's what they deserve. Ordinary people are having a bloody awful time at the minute, and it's the government's job to try to ease those cost of living pressures, to try to tackle the climate crisis, do things like put dental and mental health care into Medicare, build homes so we don't have a homelessness problem. All of this is possible. And I think when people realise it's possible, they get excited and they get hopeful again. And that gives us strength to continue to push for those things in the Parliament. And as Janet said, we're in the balance of power in the Senate. So with Peter Dutton's opposition saying no to everything, the government needs our support, and we've been able to negotiate improvements on many things so far, and we intend to continue that approach. We're certainly not just going to rubber stamp inadequate policy. We're going to fight like hell to get the best we can for ordinary people.
Absolutely. And just in terms of our support and our success in Queensland by going and talking to people and seeing what people really want, and our policies resonating with them. The recent polling has shown the Greens are now on 17% in Queensland. So obviously the voters are liking what's happening, and they're really liking us sticking up for them, and really showing that there is more that government could and should be doing. So we're going to keep on doing more of it. But I mean, essentially it's a matter of people joining us and really getting behind us and helping our movement grow, and really, because so much of the work that we do is it's people power, it's people on the ground, it's people being involved, having conversations with other people. And so if you're at all interested and you're not yet a member or not yet a supporter or a volunteer, get involved. Greens.org.au, just go to the website and there's plenty of opportunities. Okay, let's move on to the next question from Kathy Fry, which is, can you block the budget to get more income support? Which is an interesting question. I mean, most of the budget, in fact, the budget comprises a lot of multiple bills, and most of it is what's called the appropriation bills. So it's all bundled up in, here's the money that is needed for government to run on to keep the wheels turning. And it's basically it's difficult to block those bills because everything would fall over, and it's convention that the Senate doesn't block those budget bills. Plus, because that's convention, even if we decided we wanted to go out on a limb, it's certain that the Liberals would support those bills as well. So most of the budget we're not able to block. But other bills, we're in balance of power, and essentially we will look at each of those bills when we see them, and make some decisions as to whether for each of those other bills with new measures in them, whether we want to support them or not. And
whether we can get government to make good changes to them, like making sure there's not that gap in the single parenting payment between the 1st of July and the September commencement date.
Exactly. And really using our power to know that they do, if the Liberals aren't going to support them, that they need our support, and so being able to negotiate to improve things, even if we don't get everything that we want, to actually get some improvements in the measures. Okay, so then we've got a question from Ailsa Rodriguez, which is that people are being evicted from rentals in winter. How is that allowed? Which is absolutely, it's just awful to think of, people being basically living in their cars, living on the streets, in awful wintry conditions. Larissa, did you want to talk?
I'm going to answer the question. It should be allowed. Like, it just shouldn't be allowed. So I'm one eviction notice away from having nowhere to live, and I can get an eviction notice now because if I'm just late in my rent, and I'm on that third strike here where it doesn't matter what I negotiate, I'm out. There's a woman in the news today here, an older single woman who's been evicted, and she stayed in her house and waited for the magistrate's court to evict her. And I have actually had conversations with fellow advocates in this space going, this is what I'm doing. Like, I am actually just not moving. I'm just not. They can drag me out, and I've done the advocacy work, and I will call every reporter and anyone, and I don't care. And they can come and watch me be dragged out of my house with my 3 kids. We don't have a car, can't afford one. So I kind of live in that. So, and she did wait. She waited to the magistrate's court, and she only because she had nowhere to go. And this is a woman on a disability pension, didn't have a car also. It hasn't been above like 14 degrees here all week during the day, let alone at night. It shouldn't be allowed. Like it actually, it shouldn't be allowed. We shouldn't be evicting people because we're not supporting them correctly.
Yeah.
And I think it's really easy for real estate agents to make a distinction, and landlords. Like they know if they've got a good tenant who's just hit hard times. And to be perfectly honest, I think that's why I'm still here. My landlord is not the savior of landlords. He's an okay bloke. He's done the right thing so far by me, but not totally. He's still a landlord. He still put my rent up $75 before, 2 weeks before Christmas. Fortunately, $15 a day is not going to help much with that. But hey, but we shouldn't be doing it. And there are ways around it where it actually just doesn't have to happen. And that doesn't mean tenants are assholes and not paying their rent or don't expect to pay rent. It's not like we don't live here for nothing. But at the same time, it just shouldn't be happening. Like we actually should be, it's one of those things that comes back to who we are as people.
Yeah.
As a country, as a community. No, we're not standing up for it. That's not allowed. We're actually saying no to that. It's that simple. If you trash a property, fine. Like any bad behavior in our society shouldn't be tolerated. But if you simply cannot afford what is being asked of you in this moment in time, no.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Well, you're so right, Angela. I completely agree with that. And it's because we don't have any decent rental laws nationally. We've been pushing for there to be basic standards for rentals, that you can have a functional house, that there be limits on unfair rent hikes. And we're actually pushing for rent caps because rents have gone up 22% in Meanjin in the last year. And it's not, well, I think we're the highest in the country, but other states are not far off that. And we've got a real shortage of social and affordable housing supply. And so private landlords are, jacking up the rent, making nice profits, but people are hitting the homelessness queues because there's wait lists of at least 2 years to get into public housing.
Longer,
and it's not beautiful public housing. It's not good quality. It's not cheap to run. So we're taking a really strong stand on this, and we're saying the Commonwealth shouldn't be gambling this bullshit amount on the stock market to maybe, if it's got some returns, you'll spend a tiny proportion of it to build the odd house. We're saying no, put the damn money directly into building people homes and a decent amount of money so that you can actually end homelessness. That should be an aspiration for any government, no matter what side of politics you're on.
We've heard a lot about aspiration over the last few years.
Yes.
So we're really pushing for there to be more public housing that's beautifully designed and like lovely to live in, affordable for people, including for workers like nurses and, teachers and early childhood educators that can't find anywhere close to their workplace because rents are through the roof. Caps on rents, rights for renters, and a decent social housing build. And you know what? We could fund all of that and have spare change if we cancelled the tax perks for property barons.
Exactly.
The capital gains tax and the negative gearing perks, the taxpayer dollars that go to making this problem of housing affordability so bad, we could fix all of that. And, the government didn't touch that in the budget. And they're too scared to touch that because they're worried about some political blowback. And it's obscene because ordinary people are screwed right now. And the government still thinks they can get away with doing nothing about this. Well, I think they're wrong. And you've given such beautiful articulation to that tonight, Angela.
And which is why we are going really hard on the government's housing bill, which is just so pathetic in terms of tackling the scale of the crisis, because we know that it is a crisis, and that we could be doing more. That the government's making a choice to do next to nothing when they need to be spending. At least, we reckon to tackle the housing crisis, to end homelessness, we need to be spending $5 billion a year. and building social and affordable housing. And we need to have a freeze on rent and have rent caps. And so they're what we are pushing for, because we know that's what the community needs, and we're going to be playing hardball on it. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, and then our final question is, if someone in JobSeeker actually manages to get work, they lose 60 cents in the dollar for every dollar they earn above $256 while still living in poverty. How does this encourage people to get work when we would only get full pay equal to co-workers for 1 day a fortnight? And that was from Bron Fern. And absolutely, and we agree with you, Bron. I mean, we need to be raising the rate of JobSeeker and also lifting the threshold so that people can be earning more, so that you've actually have got the ability to be earning more and to lift yourself out of poverty if you're capable of working.
That also takes place on the PPS too. So that happens with me. This is Nancy, everyone.
Hi, Nancy.
Hello, Nancy.
So this
Have you
happens on
eaten vegetables?
the PPS. She had broccoli, so it's okay.
Oh, good girl.
So that happens on the PPS too, and you struggle between that, what I need to work, what I have to work when I lose too much. And and it's not, it makes no sense. It absolutely makes no sense. And you've got the opposition leader out there the other day going, well, we should, great idea, make it like we did with the retired aid pensions. And like, it's a brilliant idea. And all of a sudden we had all these skilled pensioners back in the workforce, which is not true. 3% of pensioners took that up. 44% of single mothers or single parents on the PPS work. 25% on JobSeeker work.
Exactly.
Don't make out like we don't want to work, we don't want to get back into. It's the type of employment we have, it's the type of issues we have in our lives that's stopping us from being from being gainfully employed in a meaningful way. So it is ridiculous, and it is ridiculous, the argument to say, well, you just need to work more. I calculated in my casual job to support this lot, I need to work 60 hours a week. Losing all my benefits like the healthcare concessions, my electricity plan I'm on, all of those type of little things that do add up. Thank you. Losing all of that, I've got to work 60 hours a week, try and find 20 hours a week to study, to continue my studies, to get me out of this financial situation, to get better paid work, and do this.
Yes.
Three. Sure, like, no worries, I'll do that.
Yeah, what we're going to do tomorrow, we'll fix that tonight.
Yeah, like, I've got that stuff sorted. Like, don't worry about it. It is really, we should be allowed to work more without losing it, and it shouldn't. We need to actually have a conversation about work. Full stop. The type of work people can do, whether it's paid work or unpaid work or a combination of, and that it's all work.
And we haven't even talked about the fact that we don't value the currently unpaid domestic labour that women disproportionately do. Nor have we had time to mention the fact that female-dominated professions, which are often the caring professions, are paid less.
Well, and not only that, going back to the DV thing, we didn't get time to either. I rated my super. I'm 43 years old.
Exactly.
It's a very small figure. I rated my super for that, and I'm not getting it back. And I've rated it again since then. And I know there's talk of changes, and I'll probably rate it again if there are changes, and I can't get into it.
Well, that's what happens when you're on the poverty line.
Hopefully we will then have Greens government by the time you're of pension age, Angela, and so that there will be a decent payment that you'll be able to survive.
Well, we're talking about a generation now that have given up on buying a home. I did that a long time ago. Like, I actually did that a few years ago. I've come to terms with it. What I'm grappling with now is I'm probably going to have to give up like, I've never thought about retirement as in what I wanted it to be or anything, but that super fund of that there for a rainy day, and when you get to the end of it and you don't have it, but like, that's actually something that I'm actually processing through my brain, going, well, how are we going to work until we're done? Because
and look, I think that's a really poignant place to finish, and just the need for change, so that you're not, for people like you aren't going to be left high and dry and or out in the cold. And the fact that it's a choice that governments can be making, to be looking after everybody, to be having that safety net, so everybody has the basics of having a roof over their head, having enough money, enough income so that they can afford to support themselves, support their dependents, and to be getting the other, and to be paying for all of the other basics, you know, the medical support that they need, the educational costs that they need to be actually be able to be living a decent life. And it's a choice that we can make. And the Greens want us to actually say, this is where we should be spending our money, rather than giving big tax breaks to the already very wealthy.
And if you want to talk about savings, let's talk about the savings in the education system and health system and the mental health sector, in the justice sector. If we actually fund families and people correctly in our community,
That's right,
so they can get themselves back. Like, we talk a lot about what we spend and what we save, but we actually never talk about the wasted money in not supporting people correctly, in not giving them that proper safety net.
And the human impact, like that counts too. It's not all about the bean counting. I think that genuine human impact on people matters.
Yeah, absolutely. Excellent. It's trauma inducing. This whole safety net is actually trauma inducing. And that word, I don't use that word lightly at all. It really is.
Well, Angela, you've been incredible tonight and every other time I've met you, and clearly you've been incredible for at least 14 years. And a particular shout out to little Nancy, who has got potentially a career in hairdressing there, or perhaps on the stage.
More women's low paid work. No, let's aim higher.
So thank you so much for your time tonight.
And thank you, Larissa, for joining me and joining us. And it's been a really wonderful conversation, very rich. And I mean, I want to finish up by saying that there is hope that we can create change, and that by working together, you know, we will get better outcomes, but it is going to, you know, require some work. But we're onto it, and we're going to keep doing it. And I hope that everyone who's been, you know, joining us tonight is sort of, you know, keen to be working with us to be getting the change that we need. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Well said. Take care.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Authorised by L Waters, Australian Greens, Canberra.